Good afternoon and welcome everyone to our webinars Billigence series. Today about modernizing your analytical tech stack. And we're going to speak about how to bring your technology stack to the modern age, to the cloud age. And we're going to do that by showing you a great combination of tools, Matillion, Snowflake, and Alteryx. Let me share my screen and let's jump into it. What is our idea of modern architecture? So this exactly what I'm showing you on the slide is an example of a very scalable modern cloud data architecture. So completely on the left, we still have our data sources, right? So databases, application services, devices, whatever. And then we have a centralized cloud native ETL/ELT tool, which in our case, and in the case of today's presentation, is Matillion, really ELT, extract, load, transform tool built purposefully for the cloud that onboards the data from the data sources and brings them to the cloud. And when we say to the cloud, in our case, to Snowflake. Matillion works very well with Snowflake, and Snowflake is the leading data cloud platform of today. And so Matillion taking the data out of the sources, bringing them into the Snowflake data cloud, and then transforming throughout the different layers with the possibility to ultimately scale the compute and storage, and most importantly, to be able to scale these two independently. And then completely on the right-hand side, modern data analytics and data science tools like Alteryx for the, let's say, self-service data analytics, Tableau for the data visualizations, and for example, H2O AI for data science. And so this is our kind of example of a scalable modern architecture, and we're going to look at three pieces of the puzzle that we see here in front of us today in more detail, which is Matillion, Snowflake, and Alteryx. Let's jump into it. Let's have a look at those tools and let's click through them to see how it actually works. For that, I have a demo ready for you. It's centered around a bank, so it's a retail banking demo. We're going to do a quick analysis. Our bank and our data team in the bank has a number of sources in different locations, on-prem, in the cloud, in databases, on file storage, and we want to combine them, bring them into Snowflake, transform them, build a layer that the users, that business can understand. So let's say build kind of reporting layer in Snowflake on top of the raw data, and then perform the live sharing so that we have a look at how quickly and easily we can share data in Snowflake, and then finally analyze it on the right-hand side with Alteryx. So that's what we're gonna do, and let's directly jump into it. So I'm gonna close my presentation here, and we're gonna start from the left-hand side. So as I mentioned, we have Matillion. What we are looking at here and what I'm sharing on my screen is a web user interface of our Matillion instance. Our Matillion instance is running on Azure, so we have a dedicated URL for that, and it has a browser UI. Matillion is structured into projects, so we can build different projects for our developers so that they can work in their areas. And then within those projects, we have a folder structure. So you can see that I'm in my retail banking project, and here I created a couple of folders. And in those folders, I have these jobs, green and blue jobs. And these are the actual orchestration, the blue jobs, and transformation, the green jobs, with which we do the work in Matillion. So let me open one of them. Let's start with the completely left side of our demo. So we want to bring the data from our data sources into Snowflake. And for that, I have my staging orchestration job. So double click onto my my job here in the folder structure. As you can see, my job opened here in the middle, and I can see it on my so-called canvas. It consists of number of components that I can actually drag and drop from the bottom left side. So here, bottom left window, component section. So connectors, and I'm going to go through them in a second. And I can just easily drag and drop them onto the canvas in the middle. So it's a really web browser based drag and drop interface. And that's what I did before our session here. So I have a small job here prepared, which actually uses my connector component in this load section to load data from different areas, from different source systems that our hypothetical or demo bank has available, and loads them into cloud. And by into cloud, in our case, to Snowflake. So just to high-level overview, the blue jobs, the so-called orchestration jobs, actually do the E and L of the ELT, so extract and load. And the green jobs, the transformation jobs, they do the T, the transformation, so that we have ELT, extract, load, transform. We're going to start with the E and L, and we're going to take the data out of our source systems here, and we're going to send them into Snowflake. Each of these tools, so we have our initial component, our start component, and it is connected to a number of dedicated loading components. From the load section, I took the database query component, which is this one, and decided to load our order data from Oracle. So as you can see, if I click on it, I have this nice properties interface, the properties, number of properties here in the middle section, where I can actually define the connection URL and everything that I need in a kind of easy to navigate format. And for each of these components, it's the same. So if I go to the AWS S3, which is data in our Amazon S3 buckets folders, then we have again a dedicated properties through which we can connect and define the path to our data. So I am saying here that I'm connecting to our transactional data that sit in this Billigence demo, retail banking demo S3 bucket. I'm saying this is the data to take. And I'm saying put it into Snowflake in the default schema that I designed for a specific project, and staging underscore transactions table. So this job, when I run it, takes the data out of the S3 bucket and loads it into my staging transactions table in Snowflake. And same for the other things. So we have an Oracle table containing our orders, S3 bucket, and CSV within that S3 bucket containing our transactions. We have a second cloud, so we have Azure here, and in their blob storage, we have information about the credit cards of our customers. And finally, we have also a cloud database. So on-premise Oracle and cloud SQL Server, in which we have our client master information. And we in parallel load these things in and the data out of these sources into our Snowflake. And the last part of the job on the right here is in case of a failure. So you can see that if I click on a component, I can then create the wires, right? And I can build the job and I can build the flow. And if I connect it through the red wire, which means after failure, we can define that if any one of these fails, and that's what we did here, so it waits for all of these to finish, if any one of these actually fails, it will send me an email and the job will end in failure. So let's try it out. I'm gonna run the job just by simply clicking and running the job. And let's see how it goes. Instantly, we can see in the bottom right corner, we have the task section and our job is running. So if I expand it here, our job staging orchestration has been queued and it's running. I can expand it and see actually what's happening, what pieces of the job are running. And if I click on this arrow, I can see it in more detail. So I can see that the Azure Blob part, which is this tool, also it's green, so that tells us that it already finished. So that's finished, and 3 other ones are running. So SQL Server, S3 Bucket, Oracle, everything's currently running. It may take some time for the Oracle part to finish because that's not a really quick one. It's an on-premise Oracle, and it might take a while, but it should be a while in matter of tens of seconds. So let's keep it running. It's loading our data into Snowflake, and it actually finished just now. So I can see the green tick here next to my job. Okay, so the data is loaded into Snowflake. So what next? We have the E and we have the L. Now we bring the T. So let me open a transformation job. In here, I created like a folder structure so that it's easier to follow. We have the transformation, and this is my transformation job. So you can see here that this job, I annotated it so we can put notes and really document it in Matillion directly. It took the data from the staging table. It takes this job takes the data from the staging tables, transforms them, and creates kind of a view or data mart on top of it for our users to use in their final analysis. So the difference is here we are loading the data into cloud. In our green transformation jobs, we are already working in cloud. So if I validate it, so let's say revalidate the job, which actually just makes sure that I have everything correctly defined. It pings Snowflake and just checks that all the tables that I have here exist. I'm actually performing everything on Snowflake here. So I'm pushing it down to Snowflake. You can see that also my components window changed. So I have different options here. Here I'm not reading from source systems, I'm reading from the tables in Snowflake directly. So table input enables me to query directly from the Snowflake tables. So I can go to sample and show you that I have data really available there below. But we're not bringing the data, so to say, to Matillion. We're working fully in Snowflake here, just orchestrating it from within Matillion. So what I'm doing, I'm bringing data from our 4 staging tables that we created in the previous step by loading from the source systems. Then I am performing various transformations that you would normally do in a traditional SQL database with SQL, right? So I'm selecting distinct clients from my client table so that we don't have any duplicates. I'm unifying something though so that we have the IDs throughout the systems correctly linked. I'm actually performing aggregation on the transactions table. So I'm going away from the line per transaction, but I'm rather summing it up on the account level. And I'm converting some types here. Then I'm doing joins and find some final adjustments. And then finally, with those 2 final tools at the end, I'm actually writing back. Or I am actually creating one table, which I call datamart dm underscore client, and one view. Basically the same thing I create with the same SQL, I create both just to show you how it then appears in Snowflake. And so what it does in the background, Matillion transforms all of these tools here into SQL. So I can show you if I click on a tool, you can see in the SQL section, it creates a SQL for me based on the properties that I defined. So I'm not writing any SQL, I'm doing a drag and drop and selecting from this window, and it writes a SQL for me. And then it pushes the SQL down to our Snowflake and runs on its compute, which is a great idea. So we don't have to have like a super big instance of Matillion because the transformations are really running on the compute on the virtual warehouses of Snowflake. So, okay, we have this ready. I have this transformation job that takes all my data and creates the data marts at the end out of it. So you can see it creates all the SQL for me and pushes it down to Snowflake. One thing that I haven't shown you yet is that I am actually connecting here to one table that's created by another job that I have here in my menu. So if I go, I created one job called master orchestration. So once we have this ready, we can actually put it into like a top level master job, which I have here, which actually calls the little sub jobs in a sequence. So in order to be able to transform the data, I need to first load it, right? So what I did here is actually I start, then I do the staging orchestration, which is this job that I was showing you at the beginning. Then I do a small little thing here that I actually call API of a mapping service, and I get coordinates for all my new client locations. So when I stage my new client info, I want to have the coordinates so that I can put them on map. So that's my second little job here in the sequence. And then finally, once I have all the data in Snowflake, I do the transformation. And so I can run this whole thing and perform the whole pipeline. And that's what we're going to do now. So I'm going to run it, and it's going to do these three things in sequence. Great thing about Matillion is that we have also a scheduler embedded within the tool. So it's really an end-to-end cloud-native ELT/ETL tool with a scheduling capability. So, for example, our master orchestration here, which would be probably the thing that we would schedule. If I right-click on it, if I go to schedule job, I can actually schedule it to run on schedule. And we have a lot of cool features here. We have an integration with GitHub, so we can integrate and manage the code and everything. So there is a lot of features hidden behind, and lots of components in the component section. So we have around 100 connectors to different sources. If we don't have a connector, we can use an API connector. So we can call an API of whatever we want and bring it through an API. And we have lots of cool features here that would take hours and hours to run through. So just to summarize, on the Matillion side, very easy to use, straightforward drag and drop, but with lots of capabilities built into the tool. Okay. So we can see that our job is still running, and as a matter of fact, just now finished. So if I just check the log, we can see that it started. It ran my staging orchestration in 58 seconds, which did all these four components: loaded data from Azure Blob, loading data from AWS S3, SQL Server, and Oracle. Perform the geocoding bit. So got the coordinates for my clients and the transformations at the end. So with that done, let's now jump into Snowflake and let's have a look at the data in there because they are now available. Right, so Snowflake, that's what we're looking at right now, also with a web browser interface. As I mentioned, Snowflake fully software as a service, meaning everything's managed for us. We just have this nice, easy to understand interface that we work with. And let's start by looking at the actual data, and then I'm going to jump into the additional features. So if I go into the data section, databases, we have our DemoDB. That's where I loaded it. We have our retail banking schema. This is the schema specifically for our demonstration. And here we have all the different objects that sit within it. So if I go to tables, we can see all the tables that's been just loaded. So we have the staging tables that I called stage_something, and then the data mart table for our analytics and for the, let's say, business users or data analysts to use. I also created a view. So if I go to the view section, we have DM_client_view 1 minute ago created. If I click on it, I can see the definition. So this is what Matillion pushed down to Snowflake, and Snowflake used the SQL to create a view. We didn't write any SQL in Matillion. It all was created through the drag and drop interface. Just a side note, if we have pieces of SQL that we want to use, we can put them into Matillion. It's possible, so it's code optional, so to say, but we don't have to. And we can even do things like data preview. So we don't have to write any SQL to have a look at the data. I click on data preview and automatically the data pop up in a tabular format. So this is my data mart, right? I have a client per line. I have their information, date of birth, so on and so forth. And then I have the things that I enrich the client data with. So their transaction amount throughout the that was the aggregation that I did in Matillion, the account balance, and the longitude and latitude for the clients, or the location that I would like to put on the map in Alteryx. And so we have our data in this kind of structure. We have all other sorts of things available in our schema, pipes, streams, tasks, additional features here that we can work with. But for the purposes of our demo, we're going to stick to the basics. Right. So we have the data. Now we have a couple of things that we can do with it in Snowflake. First of all, we can query the data. So I did the data preview, which was like just a quick look at the data through the interface, but we can use SQL to have a look at the data through the worksheet functionality. So I clicked on the worksheet section, created a new worksheet, and now we have our SQL editor in browser available to write anything we want. So I'm going to write a simple select statement. So select star from. On the left-hand side, I even have the database browser. So I know it's in our DemoDB retail banking, and let's query the data mart table. So I'm going to place the name here. And I'm just going to select what kind of warehouse I want to use it for. I'm going to use the extra small because that's just sufficient for us. I'm going to run it. And now we have our data available, together with some data profiles. So if I want to check, for example, the transaction amount, we can see the profile, we can see the sum, the average. So a couple of things about each of the columns that we can have a look at with and play with. So classic, but very powerful SQL editor within the worksheet section. Data, that's where we have our data and what we were looking at the beginning. And then we have additional cool features in Snowflake. So first of all, we have obviously the administration panel, so we can manage all the different things. One thing that I would like to point out is the provisioning of virtual warehouses. So Snowflake works with a concept of virtual warehouse, which actually enables you in a matter of seconds provision a new compute node without any problems, and then maybe decommission it a couple of minutes later. It's just by clicking on the add warehouse, putting the name of the warehouse, the size, and you can then specify if you want to auto suspend it because you pay only for it only when it runs. And if you want to make it multi-cluster scaling and so on and so forth. And once you create warehouse, it will be like 10-15 seconds till it's ready to use. Very cool, very simple. I think almost incomparable to any other cloud data warehouses out there. We have a lot of features regarding security, users and roles, grouping of roles, and role level security, and things like that. But one thing that I would like to show you is the activity section, so we can actually monitor all the queries that we're running for the different users, again depending on the permissions that we have in the instance. And then finally, we can also share the data, which is one of the game changers in terms of cloud and specifically for Snowflake. So let's say I want to give this data mart that I've just created, I want to give the access to the data to my partner company that's actually using it for analysis. Historically, I've been sending the data via Excel, via email, but I now have Snowflake and I want to quickly share it with them. Maybe if they have Snowflake, then it's very easy. We just share it with them. But what if they don't have Snowflake yet? Then it's also easy. We can create a reader account for them. So there is a section called reader accounts. I just need to change my permissions to be able to access them, which is kind of like a small Snowflake on top of our Snowflake, right? So we don't want to give the partner access to our own instance. We want them to have a separate one because we don't want to get mixed and don't want to expose any other data that they don't have, they shouldn't see. But there is an easy way to do that. We just create a so-called reader account. I created one just an hour ago. And through that account, they can then access our Snowflake data. And how do we do it? So let's say we have this reader account ready, which means they actually have the same kind of interface for it as we do for our main Snowflake instance. So I'm going to log into it very quickly. So this is our reader account. I'm going to just switch to the new interface because Snowflake has also a legacy interface, but the new one is better. So now I'm logged in. So let's say this is our partner company. This is their interface. They can't see any of the data that I was showing you before because I didn't share them with share the data with them yet. But what I can do is actually go to share by my account, click share data, share with other accounts. I just select the data that I want to share. I know that I want to share my my DM_client. That's our data mart. So I'm going to do that. I can put description, I can rename it, but let's not do that. Let's not waste time on that. And I'm just going to put the webinar reader account here, create a share, and it's done. There is no copying of data. It's just exposing them to the account, but it's still the same data within the same Snowflake. And now if I refresh and I actually go to the private sharing, so I need to actually accept it. So shared with me, you can see this is the share that I did. I can click get data and it's done. I have it here. Retail banking, tables, and my partner company can access the data, preview the data. And I would need to assign a warehouse to it, but it's easy as that. Now they have access to the data in a secure way. No sharing via exports and imports and stuff like that. It's through one reader account can be provisioned with in 5 minutes. Right, so we have our data, we share them with our partner, and let's say now we want to do the analytics on top of that. And for that, let's jump into Alteryx. And I'm going to jump into Alteryx Designer, which is the desktop application in their portfolio. It can be deployed on a desktop, can be deployed on a virtual machine in the cloud. And in here, we are looking at its interface. It's again a drag and drop interface. And I would say in terms of data analytics, this is a golden standard for all drag and drop tools. Within a single drag and drop, we can connect to our data, and let's connect to our Snowflake data. So I have a number of connectors here that I can use to access all the different data sources on-prem, in the cloud, and I have Snowflake connection here. So I just click here. I just need to select the right Snowflake. I'm gonna quickly copy the password from my password manager. And we have the connection established. It will open a browser here, and I can see my demo database that I created for our retail banking demo, retail banking schema that we were looking at in the Snowflake interface, and I'm gonna use the DM_client, our data mart table. Click OK, click run, and within a couple of seconds, the data is in Alteryx. So now we can see it in the results section below, we have the same table, the same data mart table that we were looking at. Now we have it in Alteryx Designer. I'm just going to click here cache data so that we're not calling Snowflake every time that we click run here. But it really doesn't matter because Snowflake caches the queries anyway and caches the result for the query. So it wouldn't run the query again. It would just send us the data from the cache. So I have my data here. What do I do with it? So let's maybe, first of all, let's have a look at the data. So I'm gonna drag and drop from my tool palette here above, a browse tool. This is a tool that helps us to profile data. Just a simple profile, understand the different columns. I want to have a look at the account balances, and I have the profile right available here in my left pane. Okay, so quick profile, I check the data. Now I want to perform first analysis. And let's say my first use case is that I want to aggregate the data and I want my top 10 suburbs in terms of transactions. So let's go into the transform pane. Drag and drop the summarize tool, also available in the favorites, which is like a set of the most used tools in Alteryx Designer. And I'm going to do a couple of things. So I was saying I want it on the level of suburb, aggregated on level of suburb. So I select suburb. I group by suburb. And what do I want to do? I want the transaction amount and I want to sum it by the suburb. So that's what I'm going to do. Just here like that in the left configuration pane. And I click run. And now if I just zoom it in a bit, you can see that there is always an input anchor and output anchor. So in the input anchor, I can see how the data look incoming into the tool. And if I click on the right, I can see how they look outgoing out of the tool. So I have my suburbs and my sum of transaction amount. But let's say I want just top 10 suburbs. I want it filtered and sorted. So first of all, let's sort it. Again, in the favorites or available also through the preparation tab, we have this quick sort tool. I'm going to sort by the transaction amount descending because I want the top transaction amount to be on top. Again, I can quickly run it. You can see now it's sorted by the transaction amount. And let's say I just want top 10. So I'm going to put sample tool first, then run, done. So if I check, we have the top 10 suburbs ready. So I did a quick analysis. I understood my top 10 suburbs in terms of transaction amount, and I want to perform more. So what I'm going to do next, and also aware of time, I'm going to do it with a quick jump into my already prepared workflow. Let's say I want to perform spatial analytics. So that's what I actually did here. So these two top sections, that's what we were looking at together in the live demo just a second ago. And then I have a couple of pre-built things here that I would like to show you and show you what's capable, what's Alteryx capable of. So I actually took the data from Snowflake, created a new wire here so I can have as many of them as I want. And I created points. So I used my longitude and latitude columns to actually create points so that I can display it on map. I created a heat map. So that's my second thing that I did with the data. And we're going to have a look at how the heat map looks just in a second. In the meantime, the below section here, but it finished. So I'm going to show you the heat map first. So I actually put my transactions on a heat map, and with a browse tool, I can check how my transactions look on a map. So what are the the top areas in New South Wales in terms of transactions of my imaginary bank? What I did next is that actually our other department sent me an email with another data set, right? Not in Snowflake, so I can't connect directly to Snowflake for it, but it's an export from our CRMs, from our customer database, and it has all the complaint events. So we have the information about all the complaints from all our clients, and we have also the narrative. So what did they complain about in their own saying? So what I did, I took the data, I did quick prep. So I did prep like I would in Excel, but I did it in Alteryx. I did some quick filtering. So I wanted only those rows where there was something told by the customer. And I performed a quick sentiment analysis to understand what actually what is the sentiment of those sentences, of those customer complaints. So we can see that there were some neutral, but more negative than positive. Obviously, this normally people don't call us to tell us that there is something that everything is in order. And then I thought, let's bring it together and put it on a map. So I joined it back to my data set in Snowflake. So I joined it with a completely different data set in a couple of tools, aggregate it, and actually displayed it on a map. So I took just those areas with negative sentiment, which are those red and orange circles, combine it with my transaction amounts, and now I have a pretty nice analysis of what areas we might focus on in terms of our services and improving our services. So let's see, in Sydney, there are some problems. We have some problems north of Newcastle. So there was a lot of complaints in the area above that. And we can see it compared with the number of transactions. So that's what we did quickly in Alteryx with our 2 data sets. The next step, we could publish it. We could share it with our colleagues in Alteryx server, but that would be for another log session. So just to sum up what we achieved, we loaded data from different data sources, both on-prem and in the cloud, via Matillion into Snowflake. We use Snowflake and Matillion to transform the data and create a, let's say, virtual data mart for our end customers. And then we performed a quick drag and drop analysis, self-service analysis in Alteryx Designer. And I think this is a great combo. I saw this kind of combination of tools used in companies. We deployed this kind of solutions for many of our clients, and it's really a powerful combination of modern data tools.